Kyle Klingman with Track Wrestling. We are going to Indiana. There is a brand new program at Trine University, and good news, it's a women's program. It is led by Amy Hildebrandt. How are you, Amy?
I'm good. I'm great.
Love hearing this. This is cool when you get to talk about new women's wrestling program. You're leading the charge. What does this look like for you for the first few weeks of having a new women's program?
Yeah, so it's definitely been a little hectic just with everything going on in the world, but we're still, charging ahead. I've been talking to athletes and talking to my girls. Everyone's been super adaptable. Just trying to figure out how the season's going to go and do our best to find that competition.
And you're a pioneer. You started the Penn High School Wrestling Club, and then they had a program. Does it feel fun to be on the cutting edge of advancing women's wrestling and knowing you're building something for the future?
Yeah, I think that's probably the most rewarding thing about where I'm at in my life right now is that I get to start things from scratch and see them grow and grow and grow and grow. And it's still growing now. I think when I started a high school team, I never imagined I'd be starting a college program. So it's like I've exceeded my expectations, and I can't wait to maybe do even more.
How do you have the foresight to start a high school program in your early 20s? That's pretty remarkable.
Well, actually, so when we started our high school program, I was in high school.
Oh.
And I wrestled on that team because I didn't want to compete against boys. So my sister's coach and the high school coach at the time, Brad Harper, came up to me and he's like, "We need to start a girls team. We need to start a girls team." And I was like, "Oh man, I guess, I don't know." I got some of my friends together and just kind of, we ran it. It was real casual, but we ran it. And then as time went on, it just kind of became my passion. I would go to freshman classes and recruit girls, and when I was in the room, I didn't notice it then, but when we were wrestling, I would walk around and I'd help coach almost. And it was like, man, I was born to be a coach, I feel like. But yeah, and then after I graduated college, I got to go back and coach the team and see just kind of where it's at, how much more established it'd been. When I was in high school, there wasn't like an Indiana high school girls state. We just went to, the ISWA tournaments, but now there was actual state, and watching it grow it was interesting to see.
So I had that backwards in my head. If you coached it, so I was associating you starting it as a coach. So you actually started it when you were a freshman in high school.
Yeah, sophomore. So.
Okay. And so on those foundational years, you talked about it a little bit, but what was that like to have that role early on and be able to carry on a great program that you're able to start right away? It's pretty cool.
It was cool. I didn't ever imagine it to get as stable as it is. I guess the first group of girls I recruited were just my friends, and they had never even seen a wrestling match before. They were all in chamber choir and stuff like that. And it was I was like, "Hey, just come try this. We just have to do it a couple times a week, and you can learn wrestling." And we just did it for fun. And then by my senior year, I was working on getting a team poster put together and having team gear and things like that. So it grew so quickly that it's almost surprising. I don't think I ever really even noticed how fast, but we had, I think, 15 to 20 girls on the team when I was a senior in high school. And now I think Penn has almost 30 girls on their team. So, and it's 30 consistent girls. Obviously, when I was in high school, they weren't that consistent, but but it grew fast, and it wasn't too hard. I mean, there's definitely a demand for a lot of high school girls. They want to try a new sport, and wrestling is so fun. And every time I have a girl come try wrestling, they're like, "That was awesome. I want to keep doing it." So it was fun, and it wasn't even that hard. I would recommend everyone start a high school program.
When you got a chance to coach it, what kind of things were you able to learn about what women want in a wrestling program, like the direction that they want, how you get them to stay involved long term?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as a coach, I think I have learned a pretty good method for introducing girls into wrestling. A lot of times girls have never even tried it. It's a completely foreign sport. And so when I was a coach, I would do early morning practices where I could teach a small group of girls who were interested, like kind of one-on-one, very individual, just super basic stuff, and never really throwing them into a practice, even if it's a girls' practice, just making sure you get that one-on-one attention with a girl and be like, I care about you, I'm invested in you, and just do that for a little bit, or have open mats after a practice or during off season. Or if you know, the school's capable, like we had multiple coaches. So one coach would be running practice, and then I would be working with the girls and being like, okay, this is how your stance should look. This is a penetration step, you know, little things like that. And that's what's really helped me keep girls involved in our program, or at Penn's program, and keep them staying, because they learn it, and they learn it the right way. And then they feel comfortable and welcome in an environment, and it just feels more like a team than like just being thrown to the wolves. I feel like that happens a little too much for girls trying to join high school programs, especially if they're trying to join on the boys team. So doing that one-on-one has really been huge in retaining, you know, women wrestlers.
Indiana has a great wrestling tradition, a lot of good wrestlers coming out of that state. Why do you think both on the men's and women's side, Indiana's really been a great state for the sport?
Why? I don't know. I love Indiana. Maybe it's because it's such a great place. Yeah, I think we just have good schools around us, good clubs around us, very nearby other great wrestling states too. So it's in the middle of the country. You can get to a lot of good tournaments and compete. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the reasons Indiana is pretty good. And then there's always, you know, those legacy names, especially in women's wrestling for us, where it's like, oh man, we have like Kayla Miracle and stuff like that. They came from Indiana. And so it's just easier to relate, and girls might see that. I don't know.
How did this opportunity with Trine come up? This is an NCAA women's program. It's not sanctioned yet. We're going toward that emerging sports status. But how did this opportunity come up for you?
So I was actually at the Indiana Girls High School Wrestling Tournament, and one of the athletic directors was there to do some recruiting, and he came up to me and was like, we want you to be our coach. It happened very quickly because they had just announced the program and they wanted to kind of get the ball rolling. But I think after I had coached high school, I was certain this is what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a wrestling coach for my life. And so when I got the chance to coach at a college, I kind of, you know, I looked into the school and sat down, had a conversation with the athletic director. They actually flew out to Colorado to talk to me and you know, kind of explain everything that they had to offer. And I just really liked the way that they wanted a woman in charge of the team, and how much they just seemed so supportive of women's wrestling that I couldn't ask for a more welcoming environment, and I haven't regretted it since. So
How do you get kids on the team right away? How do you recruit on the first season? What's that like?
Definitely challenging. It was hard because campus was closed down for, I would say, pretty much the entirety of my recruiting for the 2020 season. So that was hard. I did a lot of phone calls and, you know, Zooms and stuff like that, but definitely am excited for this next class to come in, because getting girls on campus is huge. I really think the campus sells itself. It's super pretty. So it was hard without the campus thing, but you know, I think I feel worse for girls coming in, and if they aren't able to come visit a campus beforehand, you know, I would feel bad that they'd be missing that experience. So that's kind of how recruiting looked like. It was all online, a little mismatchy, but it's all a learning process.
How do you even plan? What goes into scheduling? Is there any way you can navigate what's going to happen this season?
I don't think there's a way to navigate it. Right now, I'm just planning for, if this was completely normal, everything I would want to do and can do. So I made like a full schedule, and if things get taken off, things get taken off. But I think it's easier to take things off than add things. So I'll just go full on everything I can do. And if we have to cancel, we have to cancel.
So going back to your high school experience, is that when you knew you were going to be a good coach and this was going to be where you were going to go the rest of your life?
Actually, I didn't think at the time I didn't even like process in my brain that was something I could even do. Um, and then when I went to college, I actually wanted to be a lawyer, so I did all the pre-law stuff. And when I got out, I was like, oh, I need money for college. And that's when Coach Harper came up to me and he's like, hey, come back and coach the girls team. And then once I started doing that, I was like, okay, I'm doing this. This is fun. I want to do this. I want to coach wrestling. And I knew I could make a living out of it. So it's something I wanted to do, and I love it.
Tell us about Coach Harper. He's a guy that you see a lot at tournaments and well known in the wrestling space. What's it like being around him?
Oh, Coach Harper is a ball of energy. He's a crazy dude, definitely very extreme, but so ahead of his time, especially when it comes to women's wrestling. Just having, getting Sarah on the team and then everything he's done since, you can tell he just loves the sport so much and will do anything to just grow it. I mean, we would teach other teachers in school how to wrestle. That's like, they're like, they're in their 30s. They're never going to compete or anything, but, just growing the sport, and he's there every single day, ready to wrestle every day. So definitely a good person to be in your corner.
Tell us about the start for the Hildebrandts into wrestling. Of course, you're part of a legendary family right now with Sarah competing and your brother Drew at Central Michigan. But my understanding, it was a flyer that one of your brothers brought home. Is that the start?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was really young. I don't actually remember it, but from what I've heard from my family is, yeah, my oldest brother, Corey, came home with a flyer in middle school and was like, I'm going to do wrestling. And he had done, I think, I don't know at the time, but he's a black belt in karate. So he's done like, martial arts before. So maybe that's why he was interested in wrestling when he saw it. But yeah, he did wrestling. And then from there, I'm trying to think, Drew did wrestling too. Drew got into wrestling before Sarah did. Sarah and I used to keep, stats and books and stuff during their tournaments. And then when Sarah joined wrestling, I was a little later after her because I was not about wrestling boys. But when the opportunity presented itself to me, because she paved the way for girls wrestling kind of in our area. And then from there, that's kind of how I got into it. But yeah, it all started just kind of, it seems very random.
You're 2.5 years younger than Sarah, and you had said that you guys get mistaken at tournaments. What's that like?
I'm learning to deal with it. So it's actually happened since I was in high school. Even when I go to high school tournaments, I remember like guys would come up to me and they'd be like, why aren't you competing today? And I'm like, well, I'm not on the team. But now I get asked for my autograph a lot, and I'm like, you don't want my autograph. Well, yeah, but so that's definitely one. It's kind of awkward, but I totally get why people mistake us. People think we're twins, or yeah, sometimes we'll be standing right next to each other and people will actually think I'm her. And I'll just be like, no, she's right next to me. Which is weird. I don't know why, but yeah, definitely get mistaken for her on a regular basis in the wrestling world. I've got to do it.
How do you handle it? Is it something that you had an awkward time at first and now you just know how to deal with it?
Yeah, it was definitely really awkward to begin with. And now I'm just kind of like, it happens so often. I mean, it almost even when I'm not in, because there's kind of like, people know her in our area too. So in Indiana, people will just be like, Sarah, hey. And I'm like, no, I'm not. So it was awkward, but I've gotten so used to it. It seriously happens, at least once a week. I get mistaken for her. So even like I just bought a house, and the person I bought the house from thought I was my sister. I'd never met her before. But I guess she was in the wrestling world a little, and she's like, oh, Sarah. I'm like, no, I'm not Sarah. So yeah, I've gotten used to it. Just kind of, I joke about it and laugh about it, because I just don't want other people to feel uncomfortable.
Isn't there an opportunity here, though? If Sarah needs to go MIA, she can just have you fill in and sign some autographs.
That's true. That's true. I'll be the stunt double, but she does the actual stunts. So I'll just, yeah, I definitely could help with the autograph signing, maybe, but I don't know. That's what people tell me all the time. They're like, well, you should just sign her name, just pretend to be her. And I'm like, oh, that's one thing I don't ever really want to do. If someone's like, can I take a picture with you? Like Sarah. And I'm like, well, then what if one time they figure out down the road, Sarah's actually here and I take a picture and I don't know. So I usually am just like, no, sorry, I'm not her. But
it is pretty cool that you have a scenario, and I don't, this is groundbreaking wrestling, that you're coaching a women's college team and you have a sister that is competing for an Olympic spot. What's your relationship like as sisters?
so we're really close. I'd say she's like my best friend in the whole world. And even when I was up there helping her out, helping her train in Colorado, she would take like a day to teach me some technique or focus on what I wanted to do, which I thought was I'm so thankful for. And it's so kind of her because she doesn't have to do that, you know? And I could ask my athletes, okay, what's something you want to learn? And maybe they wanted to work on underhooks when they got to college. So I was like, Sarah, teach me, your favorite things in underhooks. And just kind of like endless amount of technique at my fingertips, I feel like. Definitely have boosted my leg laces to a whole nother level. And just kind of getting her advice on things. She answers my phone calls every time I call, and I'll just, if it's something stupid, I can still ask her, and she's always there. And she's really dependable. It's nice in the wrestling sense and in the, personal sense.
What are Hildebrandt suppers like when you get all together? Is it pretty much wrestling conversations?
Yeah, we do wrestling conversations. We all like to debate with each other, so someone will try and start a fight. From there, it'll just go. Dinner's pretty rowdy. We're a loud family, so we'll talk and we'll fight. I don't know. I know my brothers always argue about UFC. That's an ongoing fight, so just things like that. And then eventually it goes to the living room and we'll all start hand fighting and throwing people onto couches. So
looking toward what's going to happen at Trine, do you have a vision of what you want to accomplish in a certain amount of time, or are you just going as it comes along?
Yeah, so I actually am just really hoping to grow this program and just be an option for girls to be able to compete and maybe find, that avenue for wrestling if there's the chance that maybe they want to wrestle after college, making sure they have those resources to kind of pursue those dreams. That's kind of like my big goal, is to give a voice to women wrestlers and help them find their place in the wrestling community. And I guess, more specifically with competition, obviously I want my team to be a big name out there. I don't know how long that's going to take, but hopefully soon, and just kind of seeing where things go. I'm looking forward to seeing how my first 2 seasons, because it's hard to count this season just with all the uncertainty, just to kind of see where those go so I can get a better, clearer picture of the starting point. But yeah, right now I want to help grow women's wrestling. I want, not just like in popularity, but in how talented and skillful and the amount of technique these girls have. So making sure that they get the best kind of experience they can have those are my goals.
Isn't it going to be cool when we have a NCAA women's championship and not just women's programs that wrestle in the NCAA? That's going to be a great moment.
It's going to be amazing. I can't wait until it's established. And, it happens quicker than we think it will. Like I saw it at the high school level. We didn't used to have a state, and now they have, smoke machines and walkout songs, So I'm looking forward to it, and definitely positive that it's all heading in a good direction.
What's your advice to get these states that are lagging behind on women's wrestling? How do we get them on board so that we sanction it?
Mm-hmm. So you have to get the numbers. That's the most important thing. Once a state sees how many people are competing in it, then, they'll work towards sanctioning it. And getting those numbers is all about, like I was kind of talking about earlier, that one-on-one attention. You have to actively go out there and recruit girls to join. You have to pick them off the streets. It's in the high school, it's not that bad if you work in a high school. And I worked in the high school for a little bit. I would just, at the beginning of every class, I'd be like, hey, who wants to compete in wrestling? Who wants to try wrestling out? Find people in the hallway who look somewhat athletic and be like, hey, you want to try wrestling? But really giving that attention to people. It's a recruitment process, and it's a lot of work. But if a school is serious about growing their program, and hopefully they are, because wrestling needs women's wrestling, it's keeping it afloat in some ways. So if they're serious about it, they can find the time or get a club coach or something to come help out and make that team feel like a girls' team. Treat it like it's a girls' team and not like it's just your whole wrestling team.
Are your facilities adequate there?
At Trine?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we actually have a nice big space we get to use and roll out the mats. So it's the same thing the men's team uses. We're just going to use it at different times.
How do you balance that, using it at different times? You have to stay pretty scheduled on what you're going to do?
Yeah, so practices will be scheduled different times for them, probably, 2 hours after or before each other. And what we're kind of going to do is switch which days, like say Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we go at the later time, and Tuesday and Thursday, we go at the earlier time, just so that whatever the best time for practice is, we can both kind of get it. But I'm not looking at it being too hard, because mostly just wrestling uses the space, so you don't have to share it with anyone else. And working with the men's coach has been really nice. He's easy to work with, so